I'd like to present Sri John Roger, the spiritual director of the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness and what we call a mystical traveler.
But the philosophy is quite simple. Love God, love yourself, take care of yourself so you can take care of people around you, and don't hurt yourself and don't hurt others.
I guess each one of us has his own movement of spiritual inner awareness, but the key is to be aware of it. This is why the mystical traveler is here.
John Roger, you have demonstrated the ability to many people to reach into different levels of awareness and bring back information from that. And I think you've termed that the mystical traveler consciousness. Is that accurate?
It's a vocabulary term that describes a state of conscious awareness or a state of being that I feel that everyone has the ability to tap into, but probably because of the prevailing type of attitude that a person has, they wouldn't do it thinking, well, that can't be done.
That first time that he told me about the consciousness of the mystical traveler and that that consciousness had come to him and shown him this path of the work that he would be doing, and that that was what he was committed to and that was what he was going to be doing, and if I wanted to join him in doing that work, please, but if I didn't want to join him, that was fine. But that was huge because something in me recognized that there was so much more. It opened up a doorway that life wasn't just life. Life wasn't just like, here you are and you get a job and you do good things. And it opened up this door that life was a journey that I had never even imagined.
I'm not saying by this, come follow John Roger. You can follow who you want to follow. You can do what you want to do. It's fine with me. I'll assist you on whatever level you allow me to work with you. I'm not going to breathe your air for you or digest your food. You contracted to do that. I contracted to come in and to teach a technique, a method. You don't want it? There's a place down the street that might be teaching yours, but do yourself a favor. Move to what will work for you as rapidly as you can.
It's a consciousness that is willing to work with anyone that is willing to work with it. But at the same time, if they're not willing to work with it, it doesn't bother. It's non-inflictive. You wouldn't know it was present. And even though it functions through a physical form, it can be turned on and off like a light switch, that it can be made known to be present, or if the other person couldn't handle that type of an action, then it wouldn't be known to be present. You would just feel an average type of thing going on.
The mystical traveler is a name that MSIA and John Roger have given to this special energy, this special consciousness that we work with. But the strange paradox is that as I have gotten closer and closer, or over the years have had my own personal experience with this consciousness, it's the strange thing that it's me. It's inside of me anyway. I'm sort of talking to myself.
The mystical traveler is in all men, but not all men are in the mystical traveler. There is the difference. It is what we are in. It is what we are of. It is what we are becoming. It is what we are doing. It is what we are expressing. And so it's called the mystical traveler. You could call it a light traveler or a spiritual traveler, and it is a transcendental knowledge field that is aware totally on all levels and can traverse levels, and part of its action on the planet is to bring those souls who are ready for that state in their next experience to transcend the physical body and what was referred to as a soul, and transcend levels of illusion. And so the main focus is, of course, into a higher consciousness. It is, for the most part, a commutator. It's a consciousness that steps energy down to this level so the energy can be utilized. And it's a direct line into spirit, bypassing the psychic realms. So that it's very difficult to state what that is because you can't measure it according to psychic or scientific or material phenomena, because it's only with the spirit you see the spirit. So somebody who's functioning in the psychic realm would miss what we're doing, but those who are functioning in the spirit realm would see what I'm doing and say, oh yes.
Right.
We would recognize it as, oh yes, that's what's going on. This idea of soul travel is not putting down anything else. If astrology works for you, that's fine. That's part of your movement of spiritual inner awareness. If it's numerology, mediums, scrying, crystal ball gazing, tea leaf reading, tarot cards, clairvoyant perception. Hey, that's fine. It's all part of it. If it's Lutheran, Catholic, Episcopalian, Mormon, atheist, that's fine. It's all part of it.
Maybe a way to describe it, if you're not familiar with it or haven't had an experience with it, would be the still small voice that sits inside of all of us. You know, we all kind of know, even when we're in the worst situations or the best situations or any situation, there's a little part of us that seems to sit back here that seems to just know us and love us and see it from a very observing standpoint and probably has good advice if we listen. Well, the mystical traveler just seems to be that in spades. So it's very much a part of me, but it's also something I can tap into. And it's a very real consciousness, very much like when I leave the body and have the opportunity to be doing spiritual work there and run across the traveler. It's really quite a phenomenal event. And I know it sounds mystical, and that's exactly what it is. I mean, you can't see it, but it's as real as sitting here talking to you.
You know, the teachings of the traveler are much the same way. A lot of people want to interpret the teachings of the guide, and it isn't done that way. That traveler resides inside, and you go in there, you get the answer. You go to somebody else, you're going to get their opinion about the tradition of what happened. And it may be that it was a tradition and not the reality. And boy, I don't want to mislead anybody. We're teaching one of how to get outside of the body worlds into the worlds of pure spirit, or what's referred to as the heavens. The true heavens have a connection inside of you. Bible says the kingdom of heaven is within. It says God resides in heaven. And why is it that people are holding their hands up to the sky looking for God? Why do they do that? Because they really don't believe that the kingdom of heaven is inside. They really don't believe that God resides inside of them. They really don't believe the words of Jesus. They really don't do it, or they wouldn't be doing that. They would all be quiet, going inwardly, looking for that Savior inside. The teachings of the movement of spiritual awareness are teaching such that they run out into spirit. But there are many levels of spirit. This is a behavioral matrix of the spirit body. These are planes of existence, like if you were taking an orange and cutting it and planing it and planing it and planing it. The bottom part of the orange would be here, and the middle part would be someplace up in here, and then, of course, it'd go back down to the small end again. Down here in the lower left corner, going towards the center of the target, there's the physical, astral, causal, mental, etheric, and the soul. And these levels starts here in this physical realm that we look at and we sort of call the land of reflected light. And the reason for that is we're seen because we reflect light. And if we didn't, then we'd be air or something else. Put the colors of the realms with the physical, the green, and the sound of its thunder. And the next realm we have above us is a little more difficult to see, but it's labeled the astral realm. In the astral, it's pink, and the sound is the roaring of surf. And this realm is one that we enter into often when we're in a daydreaming state. The realm that we transcend above that is the causal realm. And in the causal, it's orange color with the tinkling of bells. And it's been looked at as being heaven. A lot of times we get there when we are in a high state of emotion, and it's sort of a blissful feeling. But the ability to contain this powerful emotional quality can help lift you into the next realm, that is a mental realm. And in the mental, it's blue, the sound of running water. This would be where our ideas are originating and going forth and creating most of our disturbances. When we've passed the mental realm, and it's a beautiful thing, most religions on the planet get their spiritual contact information from that level. We enter then into what's known as the etheric realm. And in the etheric, it's purple, it's a buzzing sound. And that's all I can tell you about it. And after we have passed through this esoteric level, then, my friends, we're getting to where we come in. And we call this the soul realm, or the really first manifestation of heaven. And in the soul, it's yellow, and it's the sound of a flute or many flutes. We have to work through these other levels for some reason that God has ordained for us, so that we can more ably know our own God consciousness, so that we may know our divine spark within. Do you know what happens when those levels clear themselves? You automatically move very deep inside of you into the soul, wherein the Christ and God, the divine spiritual energy, the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost, resides, lives. You can't get up here without a traveler, but the Lord himself takes you up from someplace in the soul realm here. The Lord himself will take you up. You really don't have to know who it is, but at the same time, when you look at the Lord, you start to see yourself until you finally get up here and you find out it was you doing all this all the time anyway. That thing in you that knows the light in me, and the light in me knows the light in you. Another way of saying it would be the Christ in me salutes the Christ in you. When you awaken to yours, you awaken to mine, and we're all one anyway. Then's when we start getting into spirit. Prior to that time, we're dealing in karma. There's karma in every realm lower than the soul realm. Karma on every realm lower than the soul realm. Did you get that?
Everyone on the planet, and this is an all-inclusive statement, is involved in what you'd call karma, or cause and effect. Mm-hmm. Karma often has been considered bad by a lot of people, but it isn't. It just really means action. Mm-hmm. And then our attitude would say good or bad.
But the attitude
is the attitude, yeah.
Right.
But there's also a dharma, and this means the unselfish duty of service to others. First of all, we have to have truth. And once we find we work in truth, then we have dharma, and that is serving in truth. And then we have to have devotion, and that is be devoted to the truth. Mm-hmm. Then we have to have peace, which is the peacefulness through truth. And then we have the loving, which is the loving in truth. So the whole thing has to be based upon a truth concept from the very beginning, and only God can be considered total truth. So the whole form has to be oriented, that if you're God-oriented, you're dealing in truth, which is no karma. But it would be duty, love, and service, and peace. And in this, then, a person is released from their incarnations of karma.
One day, JR called me at the office, and he said, "Have you been wanting to go to India?" And I said, "No." "Why?" And he said, "Because it showed up on the cosmic mirror."
It's interesting the way this cosmic mirror works. When you get there, you're going to say, it's a mirror, but it's not a mirror. Now, a water's not a mirror, but it will reflect you, and a mirror will reflect you, and so will a lot of other things. It sits right at the top of the etheric, between the soul and the etheric level. But what it does is it reflects you in terms of all things below that level. You're seen, and there maybe is a point of light with all this great light, and you see it as you, the great light, and you say, I'm God. Well, you are anyway, but you're just not the God. He's on the other side of the mirror. Our business in the Church of the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness is the business of soul transcendence. Is soul transcendence. That's our business.
Soul transcendence. It took me a lot of years to try to get my arms around what exactly that means. I think the best way to describe that would be moving constantly to let go of our conditionings and preconditionings and the things that limit our ability to be as expressive or expansive as our consciousness really can be.
People who are actively searching for the great inner awareness that transcends this thing that we call the body. The movement of spiritual inner awareness recognizes the body as also being spiritual. And so we find out that no matter what we do, we can't get away from the idea that we are on a spiritual path. But when it comes time for people to transcend the physical level of consciousness and go into spirit, then you have to have someone who can do that. And that is done not by word level, not by mockery, not by religious ritual, but by reaching into the teachings of the traveler consciousness and utilizing them. And they come forward like a wrench and a screwdriver and a chisel and a paintbrush and sanding, and you can actually do with spiritual consciousness the things that other people have the knowledge of doing and have the intelligence of doing and can reason it all out and have some understanding and compassion, but cannot do, which is the empathy. That doing is the degree that we receive on the physical level.
The nature of this world and the nature of the physical world seems to be one that covers up or can very easily hide the more subtle and sublime parts of who we really are. I think we have access to that. So the idea of transcending these levels is not to deny them and not to say they're awful, but the ability to be able to transcend, meaning I need to be able to lift up, let go and expand, and that can happen immediately. If you can let go of everything except whatever you can't let go of, whatever you can't let go of is the soul. So learning to just drop that and drop that and drop that and keep coming present is really the practicality of, I think, the soul transcendence practices.
When you first get in there, you start having a sense of, gee, it's all one thing there. It all seems to be very similar. I don't know really where I am. It all looks the same. Maybe I'm not anywhere. Maybe I'm not even there. Maybe I am there and I don't know it, and before you know it, you're back in the mental realm. You move back into the soul realm, you'll say, whoopee, and you're back in the physical body. Your eyes open thinking, what, did anybody hear that? They'll think I'm a nut. This is why you have to learn to direct yourself. We call it spiritual exercising. Spiritual exercises is you disciplining yourself, directing yourself to the spirit of your being. When you find that, you'll find the Lord that's connected you to it, and through the Lord you find God. Chanting the spiritual exercises builds an energy bridge into the higher levels of light, which makes it easier for you to get in and out without having the great disturbances of shocks to the body and jerking and things like this. The best spiritual exercise is that one that takes you into the heart of God.
It's doing something active. It's chanting a tone or repeating a mantra, and it's an active participation in observing and in awareness, so that it isn't just letting whatever happens, happens. It's actively directing it and actively participating in it.
Hu is the ancient Sufi or Sanskrit name for God, the ancient sound, Hu.
A tone that people can chant outwardly isn't their own initiation, but like the Anai Hu, which brings empathy and a connection and a oneness with God. So people can chant like, Anai Hu.
When we are exercising spiritually to arrive to any degree of spiritual awareness, we have to hold our consciousness to that awareness. A lot of things will work whether we use them or not, like all the faults and the bad times and the heartaches. They come in whether we want them or not. But to bring in the good things we want, we have to tune into that. And to do this, we chant.
All I can say is just from personal experience, it is something that if I think about it, if I internally hum it, if I bring it into my awareness at all, there's a kind of a clarity, there's a kind of an ease that happens and a kind of a grace that shows up with it. So just from personal experience, it works.
There's one current of energy that streams out of God, because out of God comes all things. And this energy that we call the energy of God, we refer to it as the sound of God, or God's light. And we know that as it comes down to various levels of manifestation, it will take on the levels of that manifestation. And within the levels of that manifestation, we come again to the Buddha, and to the Krishna, and to Ram, into all of them as being differentiation. These are all sacred tones that have been charged through a spiritual consciousness. Some people are chanting various names of various avatars. This would apply, either old ones or new ones, because this is a continual state of progression.
Okay. When a person has reached a certain level in their spiritual progression, this will be when you have received initiation into the sound current.
The initiation into the sound current is you're given a tone that you then practice every day, whether it's 10 minutes or 2 hours. And you don't share it, it's a personal sacred tone. And that's taking that time inside your heart and connecting in a greater way with God.
Until you've been initiated to the sound current, which I do not do until you've studied 2 years actively, ongoing, because we're going to be working off so darn much karma in that 2-year period that you're going to feel like you're turned every way but loose. You're going to get off this planet, and it doesn't mean wings. In other words, things can be difficult, but in it will become a great joy. It's very funny. The people in the movement, God, they sit there and something just sings inside of them.
And let's just call this the sound current. When you're initiated, what happens is either your consciousness of the astral is either brought up and touched to the sound current up here, this straight line, or the sound current is brought down and touched to you. You want to try to stay in the sound current, cycling around on it, because the sound current goes both out and in. It's centrifugal and centripetal.
The movement talks about the sound current, the Shabda Yoga, which is really a description of sort of the universal flow of energy out of God or from God or directly to that. The closest thing you could describe would be ecstatic love for yourself and all the universe, and you basically see the path that we're on and that this is all in one big flow.
And you may hear something and wonder, what was that? And somebody said, well, how does that work with the sound current? God spoke, and that was the sound current.
Similarly, the personal initiation, and there are different levels of it, from physical, emotional, mental, etheric, on up into soul and way above, that people have an opportunity, if they're really dedicated and committed to that pathway of going home to God and transcending while we're still living. You know, some people think, oh, you have to die to go home to God. And JR teaches, no, through the initiation, you can have that experience while you're still living here.
There's 27 levels of initiation that are possible for a person in the sound current. 5 are done here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Astral, causal, mental, etheric, and soul. Though the soul level is done first in the soul consciousness. Then it's connected here and tied in. And at that point, all the others are done in the spirit. When we get in the soul level, the agreement is then done in the spirit to either go up with me into the higher levels, or there are other travelers. When I leave the physical world as a soul consciousness, the traveler consciousness will stay here with the next person, because it's a continuum. Like the traveler consciousness is lined up in this chair here as a great big column of light, and it's always there. So here I come traipsing through life, and I walk into it, and they say, you're now going to be the anchor point for the traveler consciousness.
And at that moment, the awe of God and the wonderment that you are seeing your essence reflected back to you is absolutely staggering.
The greatest gift JR has ever given me has been my initiation. I remember one Christmas at his home in Baldwin Park where his Christmas gift to several of us were our next initiations. That was our present, and it was like, can it get any better?
When you go forward and you are giving the message of the light, the mystical traveler will go with you and transmute all karma. But as long as we stay within that framework that the Sugmad has issued forward through the mystical traveler that we know can lift, and we put this out, no karma comes your way. You are giving forth the grace of God through your own beingness. We are the instruments in this physical level. Now that we know, let us become more perfect instruments on this level by more perfectly changing and adjusting to everyone that comes to us. And then we have loved our neighbor as we have loved our God.